Hey everyone, ready to dive deep into the world of Police Story 3? Super Cop? Released on July 4th, 1992. This film has sparked endless discussions, and today, we're uncovering every thrilling detail. If you enjoy this deep dive, don't forget to hit that like button. It really helps us grow. And for more incredible movie explorations and hidden gems, subscribe to the channel. Now, let's unravel the magic behind this cinematic masterpiece. In the golden summer of July 4th, 1992, as fireworks lit up the skies across the United States, a different kind of explosion graced the silver screen, one that didn't come from Hollywood, but from the relentless creative energy of Hong Kong cinema. Police Story 3, Super Cop, directed by Stanley Tong and starring the indomitable Jackie Chan alongside the fiercely magnetic Michelle Yeoh, didn't just arrive in theaters. It landed like a thunderclap. It was a full-throttle, genre-bending, bone-crunching spectacle that proved Hong Kong action wasn't just competing with Hollywood. It was redefining the rules. This film wasn't just the third installment in an already iconic franchise. It was a reinvention, an escalation, and ultimately, a revolution that would catapult its stars and its daring spirit onto the world stage. From the very first frame, Super Cop radiates a kinetic energy that never lets up. It's as if the film itself is in motion, refusing to slow down, constantly challenging itself to go bigger, faster, and more dangerous. Jackie Chan reprises his role as Inspector Chan Kakue, the ever-resourceful and comically self-deprecating cop who's made a career out of surviving the impossible. But this time, the stakes are higher, and the mission is unlike anything he's ever faced. The Hong Kong police force joins forces with mainland Chinese authorities and Interpol to dismantle an international drug cartel that operates with military-level precision and ruthlessness. That's the setup, but what unfolds is a whirlwind of deception. High-stakes espionage, daring infiltration, and action sequences that defy both gravity and sanity. What makes this film extraordinary isn't just the stunts, though they are truly the stuff of cinematic legend. It's the atmosphere, the pacing, the chemistry, and the risks, both on screen and behind the scenes. It's a movie that blurs the line between performance and reality. Jackie Chan hangs from helicopters, leaps onto moving trains, and crashes through windows not with the help of green screens or CGI, but with grit, athleticism, and the occasional trip to the hospital. And then there's Michelle Yeoh, making her Police Story debut with such unshakable confidence that it's easy to forget this was her return to action after a brief retirement. Her motorcycle leap onto a moving train is not only one of the most breathtaking stunts in cinema history, it's a statement, a declaration that she was here to dominate, not just survive. The plot cleverly intertwines a traditional undercover cop storyline with a globe-trotting sense of urgency. Kakue is assigned a mission by Interpol to go deep undercover and gain the trust of a vicious drug lord's inner circle. The journey takes him to Guangzhou, where he's paired with Inspector Jessica Yang, played by Yeoh, whose intelligence and physical prowess instantly command respect. Together, they stage a prison break to rescue Panther, the drug lord's right-hand man, and earn their way into the operation. What follows is a masterclass in tension building, as Kakue and Yang must constantly improvise to maintain their cover, all while feeding crucial intel back to their superiors. But trust becomes a fragile thing, especially when the enemy is always watching and the cost of failure is death. The film's narrative genius lies in how it balances intense suspense with explosive action, and then layers in just enough humor to remind us that we're still in Jackie Chan's world. His comedic timing remains razor-sharp, especially in the scenes where he's forced to explain his behavior to his ever-loyal but exasperated girlfriend May, played by Maggie. The domestic tension grounds his character, reminding us that behind all the bravado and broken bones is a man constantly caught between duty and personal chaos. One of the film's most riveting elements is its seamless blending of styles, gritty realism, slick spy thriller, screwball comedy, and martial arts showcase, all coexisting in perfect harmony. That balance is maintained thanks to Stanley Tong's directorial vision, which brings an almost documentary-level authenticity to the action. He knows exactly how long to let a shot linger on a jump, a punch, or a collision to maximize the impact. He doesn't cut away from the pain. He leans into it, letting us feel every hit, every near-death experience, and every triumph. Visually, Supercop is a treat. The locations range from sun-baked rural villages and lush jungle drug camps to the gleaming urban skyline of Kuala Lumpur, where the jaw-dropping finale unfolds atop a moving train beneath a helicopter's spinning blades. The camera work, often handheld or crane-mounted, places the viewer directly in the path of danger. There's no safety net, no glossy polish to hide behind. The film's rawness is part of its charm. You can practically hear the wind whip past Jackie's face as he dangles midair, or feel the shockwave of an explosion rumbling through your chest as it rocks a jungle hideout. But beyond the mechanics of filmmaking, it's the performances that elevate Supercop into legendary territory. Jackie Chan, already known for blending slapstick humor with martial arts precision, brings a more serious edge to Kaku-e this time around. He's still funny, still clumsy in the most endearing ways, but he's also more world-weary, more aware of the gravity of his choices. This is a Kaku-e who understands that heroism often comes with a price. Opposite him, Michelle Yeoh is mesmerizing. She doesn't just match Jackie punch for punch. She steals scenes with her unflinching composure and elegance under pressure. In many ways, Supercop is as much her film as it is his, and watching them work together is like witnessing two masters of their craft engaged in a beautifully violent dance. The film's impact on global cinema cannot be overstated. When Miramax picked it up for U.S. distribution in 1996, retitled Supercop for Western audiences, it introduced a generation of viewers to a new kind of action movie. This was long before Jackie Chan's Rush Hour success or Michelle Yeoh's Oscar-worthy roles. At the time, they were imports, glimpses into a filmmaking style that valued authenticity over artifice. The success of Supercop abroad helped pave the way for a Hollywood era that would come to embrace Hong Kong cinema techniques, leading to films like The Matrix, Kill Bill, and countless others that borrowed liberally from the Hong Kong action playbook. And culturally, Supercop resonated because it felt like a challenge to the status quo. It said that action films didn't need invincible superheroes or billion-dollar effects to be gripping. They needed guts, ingenuity, performers willing to put everything on the line to create something unforgettable. Jackie Chan and Michelle Yeoh didn't just act in these scenes. They lived them, and audiences could feel that in their bones. That kind of authenticity is rare. It's what elevates Supercop from an entertaining action flick to a cultural touchstone. It's the reason the film still shows up on greatest stunts of all time lists. It's why directors like Quentin Tarantino and the Wachowskis have cited it as a key influence. And it's why, more than 30 years later, audiences continue to rediscover and celebrate its brilliance. Even the ending, chaotic, relentless, triumphant, leaves you breathless. The final sequence is a masterclass in escalation. A helicopter, a train, explosions, gunfire, Michelle Yeoh launching herself from a ramp, Jackie Chan climbing a ladder as it swings through midair over a moving train. There's no faking it, no hiding behind digital effects. It's all real. And in that realism lies the magic of Police Story 3, Supercop. This movie isn't just worth watching. It's worth studying. It's worth revisiting. It's a piece of cinematic history forged from bruises, sweat, and an uncompromising belief that audiences deserve to see the real thing. It reminds us what movies can do when they're created with passion, fearlessness, and just a touch of madness. So if you've never seen Supercop, or if it's been a while since you last felt that pulse-pounding energy, now is the time to dive in. Because films like this don't just entertain, they electrify. They redefine what's possible. And once you've seen it, you'll never look at action cinema the same way again. Hey everyone, ready to dive deep into the world of Police Story 3, Supercop? Released on July 4, 1992. This film has sparked endless discussions, and today, we're uncovering every thrilling detail. If you enjoy this deep dive, don't forget to hit that like button. It really helps us grow. And for more incredible movie explorations and hidden gems, subscribe to the channel. Now, let's unravel the magic behind this cinematic masterpiece. The opening moments of Police Story 3, Supercop wastes no time plunging us into its high-stakes world. We return to the ever-resourceful and slightly reluctant hero, Inspector Chan Kakue, Jackie Chan at the height of his powers, this time introduced not amid urban chaos, but with an air of professional recognition. He's summoned by his superiors to a covert meeting, and from the moment he walks in, there's a sense that something big is brewing. The mission laid before him isn't a standard Hong Kong police operation. It's international, politically delicate, and extremely dangerous. Interpol needs an officer who can go undercover, deep undercover, into the world of an elusive and deadly drug syndicate operating across borders. And that officer is him. What sets the tone here is the gravity of the situation. There's no bumbling introduction or comic stumble into action. Chan is chosen for his history, his reputation, his ability to think on his feet and survive under pressure. But he's not going in alone. That's where we meet Inspector Jessica Yeoh, portrayed by the fierce and elegant Michelle Yeoh. From her first appearance, she commands the screen with a quiet strength. Calm, calculating, and composed, Yeoh is the perfect counterpart to Chan's more spontaneous and chaotic approach. Their dynamic is instantly fascinating, not romantic, but rooted in mutual respect and competitive energy. These two are professionals, and they know the mission demands perfection. The operation begins with a daring plan: break Panther, the trusted lieutenant of the drug cartel leader, out of a heavily guarded mainland Chinese prison. The scene that follows is an incredible exercise in tension and strategy. Kakue and Yeoh must fake a criminal altercation to earn their place inside the prison's transport system, and in doing so, they orchestrate a riotous escape. It's chaos choreographed to perfection. The punches are real, the risks palpable, and every beat inches them closer to Panther's trust. Jackie Chan, playing the role of Fong while undercover, flips into a more aggressive, darker version of himself. Less polished, more volatile, enough to make even hardened criminals second-guess him. As they escape through the rugged, muddy wilderness, Panther begins to let his guard down. There's a rawness to this segment that contrasts sharply with the more polished sequences to come. The terrain is unforgiving, the action more primal. But it's during this trek that we see the seeds of tension begin to sprout. Kakue and Yeoh are constantly improvising, hiding their communication with their handlers through covert radio signals and quick, coded exchanges. Each step they take deeper into Panther's world is one step closer to complete exposure. One wrong move, one slip of the tongue, and they're dead. The pacing is relentless. There's no time for rest, no pause between suspense and danger. After the escape, they are transported to Panther's base in a dusty border town, an area where the law is blurred and corruption runs unchecked. Here, the world opens up. We begin to see the broader operation at work: manufacturing, transportation, military-level security. And hovering above it all, unseen for now, is the drug kingpin himself, Chaibot. He's a ghostly figure, never seen but always felt, like a shark circling just out of sight. His power is in the paranoia he creates, and the deeper Kakue goes, the more he realizes just how sprawling and sophisticated this empire is. It's in this border town that the film flexes its ability to shift tones without losing momentum. Moments of high-octane action are interspersed with bursts of humor, character development, and tension-building dialogue. One particularly clever moment has Kakue and Yeoh helping Panther retrieve a hidden stash of weapons, pretending to be old friends while staying on edge. Their banter walks a tightrope, light-hearted enough to pass for camaraderie, but laced with anxiety over being found out. You can almost hear the clock ticking in the background. At any moment, the ruse could crumble. And just as things seem to be stabilizing, the film injects another layer of complexity. Kakue's girlfriend May, played once again by the endlessly charming Maggie, arrives on the scene. She's a tour guide, having taken a job that just so happens to cross paths with Kakue's operation. Her sudden appearance is an emotional time bomb. She has no idea he's undercover, and he can't risk blowing his cover by acknowledging her. What unfolds is both hilarious and excruciating, as Kakue is forced to pretend not to know the woman he loves, all while fending off her growing suspicions. It's classic Jackie Chan, balancing slapstick humor with real emotional stakes, and it adds a jolt of unpredictability to the already volatile scenario. But this is where the film truly excels, in keeping you off balance. Just when the audience is beginning to understand the rhythm of the story, it shifts gears. The syndicate moves operations to Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, and the tone changes once again. We go from the gritty, dusty hideouts to a gleaming, cosmopolitan city that introduces a new level of danger. The stakes are no longer regional, they're global. And this is where Chaibot finally emerges from the shadows. The transition to Malaysia is marked by a spectacular action set-piece that involves a convoy attack, a highway ambush that turns a simple transport job into a war zone. The choreography here is some of the film's best. Motorcycles weaving between traffic, machine guns roaring, vehicles flipping. Each shot is captured with crystal clarity, letting the audience feel the kinetic force of every movement. Jackie Chan's improvisational genius is on full display as he navigates the chaos using whatever is at hand. Car doors, signposts, sheer adrenaline. From this moment forward, the film takes on a more polished, James Bond-like vibe. Kakue and Yeoh are now fully embedded with the cartel, preparing to assist in the next phase of their operation. The sense of isolation intensifies. They're deep behind enemy lines with no backup, no exit plan, and no certainty that they'll survive. Even Yeoh, normally calm and composed, begins to show cracks in her resolve as the reality of their situation sets in. But they press on. The information they've gathered is invaluable, and their mission isn't just to collect data. It's to dismantle the operation from within. This next stage introduces high-tech surveillance, double agents, and even more morally complex choices. Kakue must lie, cheat, and steal not just from the enemy, but from himself, compromising his principles in order to save lives. Each action has a cost. Each decision tightens the noose. The first half of Super Cop is more than just build-up. It's a relentless ascent, each moment lifting us higher, closer to the edge of a fall we can't yet see. Characters are introduced not with exposition dumps, but through action, defining themselves in motion. Panther, loyal yet reckless, becomes both ally and threat. Yeoh, ever the professional, reveals layers of vulnerability and ferocity that hint at an explosive second half. And Kakue, trapped in a web of lies and loyalty, begins to realize that this mission might not end with a simple arrest. The world he's entered is darker, deeper, and far more dangerous than he imagined. What makes this first half so gripping is not just the speed or the spectacle, but the slow, creeping dread that builds underneath. Every laugh, every near miss, every clever improvisation is tinged with the knowledge that something big is coming. A betrayal, a twist, a line crossed that can't be uncrossed. And as the team prepares for the next phase in Kuala Lumpur, with Chaibot watching closely and the operation on a knife's edge, the tension becomes unbearable. This isn't just setup. It's a fuse being lit. And when it finally reaches the powder keg, the explosion will be unlike anything we've seen before. There's a pulse that runs through Police Story 3, Super Cop, and it doesn't just come from its explosive stunts or heart-pounding action. It comes from the characters, their layered motivations, clashing ideologies, raw vulnerabilities, and the humanity they struggle to protect beneath the armor of duty. At the center of this volatile storm stands Inspector Chan Kakue, portrayed with electrifying finesse by Jackie Chan. By the time this third entry begins, Kakue is no longer just the maverick cop from Hong Kong, who leaps through windows and fights crime with an almost reckless charm. He's evolved, still the underdog at heart, still wildly inventive in the field, but now carrying the weight of previous missions, mistakes, and a deepened sense of responsibility. In Super Cop, Jackie plays Kakue with more grit, more edge. The stakes are global now, and while his body still performs miracles, his mind and emotions reveal someone who's beginning to understand that courage is no longer enough. Precision, restraint, and compromise must now share the wheel. Kakue's core motivation remains unchanged: justice. But this time, justice requires masks, lies, and the painful distance of deception. Early on, as he's tasked by Interpol to go undercover, We see his hesitation, not from fear, but from a knowledge of what such operations cost. And it's in that first flicker of doubt that the arc begins. He's not just a fighter anymore. He's a strategist, forced to maneuver through a criminal world that doesn't give second chances. Jackie Chan's performance threads this duality with astonishing skill. He uses his body as language. His stumbles, his speed, his reactions all tell a deeper truth. When Kakaway pretends to be a criminal to gain Panther's trust, there's a momentary pause in his eyes, a shadow of the man he really is flashing behind the performance. Subtle, fleeting, but powerful. That's what makes Jackie's portrayal unforgettable. The physical brilliance is backed by real emotion. But Kakaway's evolution would be incomplete without his foil and equal. Inspector Jessica Yeoh, brought to life with steel-edged grace by Yeoh. From the moment she enters, there's no mistaking her command. Where Kakaway embodies improvisation and instinct, Yeoh exudes precision and calm. She's a mainland Chinese officer with her own brand of loyalty, and that cultural distinction adds a quiet tension to her relationship with Kakaway. They come from different systems, yet they fight for the same cause. What makes her arc riveting is how she gradually lets her walls down. Not in weakness, but in trust. She begins as a strategist, unemotional and exacting. But as she watches Kakaway risk his life over and over, she begins to loosen her grip, to improvise, to fight with heart as much as skill. Yeoh doesn't just play Yeoh as a capable officer. She plays her as a woman grappling with the morality of espionage, the risk of losing herself in the role. She's willing to dive into danger headfirst, as evidenced in the later scenes where she hangs from moving vehicles, engages in brutal hand-to-hand combat, and performs her own mind-bending stunts. But beyond the action, it's in the quiet moments where her performance shines. The way she studies Kakaway, trying to understand him, the way she absorbs his unorthodox methods while staying true to her mission. By the time the story explodes into its final act, Yeoh has transformed, not just into a better agent, but into someone who believes that sometimes chaos is necessary to break through tyranny. And then there's Panther, the seemingly unremarkable middleman of the syndicate who gradually evolves into a central pillar of the narrative. Played by Yeoh with a mix of charm, menace, and unpredictable rage, Panther is both a threat and an opportunity. He's loyal to the cartel, specifically to Chaibot, but he's not a mindless enforcer. There's a human dimension to him, a respect for camaraderie, an odd sense of honor. Kakaway and Yeoh manipulate that loyalty to embed themselves deeper into the organization, but they also come dangerously close to empathizing with him. That's what makes Panther such an intriguing character. He's not driven by greed or ego, but by a sense of place and family in a ruthless hierarchy. When Kakaway helps him escape prison, Panther doesn't forget it. He defends Kakaway later, protects him in the face of doubt. That loyalty becomes a double-edged sword, making Panther both a tool and a time bomb waiting to detonate if the truth ever comes out. Supporting this triad of dynamic leads is the ever-beloved May, played by Maggie. In many ways, May is the heart of the series, the grounding force that reminds us. Kakaway is more than just a super cop. He's a man, a boyfriend, a person whose choices affect those he loves. In Super Cop, May isn't given the kind of agency that Yeoh commands in the field, but her presence is no less vital. Her accidental intrusion into the undercover mission is a masterstroke of tension and comedy, creating a situation so volatile it could destroy everything. Chung plays May with equal parts warmth and fury. She's not just comic relief, she's the emotional tether. Her heartbreak, confusion, and eventual resolve give the film moments of genuine poignancy, reminding Kakaway and us of the personal cost behind every explosion. And then there's Chaibot, the villain who doesn't need to scream or snarl to be terrifying. Played with cool authority by Kenneth Sang, Chaibot is the puppet master who rarely gets his hands dirty, but whose presence looms over every scene. He's not the kind of antagonist who enjoys chaos for its own sake. He's methodical, ruthless, and always 10 steps ahead. What makes him so effective is that he doesn't underestimate his enemies. When he finally enters the narrative, he immediately tests Kakaway, not with violence, but with subtle manipulation and cold observation. His measured dialogue, his unnerving calm, and his intelligence make him a different breed of villain. One who believes in control and uses fear like a scalpel, not a hammer. Even the minor characters in Super Cop are drawn with enough texture to leave an impact. Chaibot's wife, for instance, seemingly a background figure, is used masterfully in the final act to upend expectations. Her role becomes central in the climactic hostage exchange, and her desperation reveals a sliver of vulnerability in Chaibot himself, if only momentarily. The Syndicate soldiers, Yang's superiors, even Kakue's handlers, all serve as extensions of the film's thematic framework. Trust versus betrayal, loyalty versus survival, duty versus humanity. What makes Super Cop's characters so enduring isn't just how they're written, but how they evolve in response to their environment. The film itself is a pressure cooker, and every character reacts differently to the heat. Kakue fights harder, improvises more wildly. Yang steadies herself and adapts with grace. Panther clings to loyalty until the walls crumble. Mei erupts with fury before transforming that rage into resilience. And Chaibot? He watches, calculates, adjusts, until the moment comes to strike. These arcs converge in ways that elevate the film far beyond typical action fare. You're not just watching stunts. You're watching people fight for their identities, their beliefs, their futures. The performances never feel like caricature. Jackie Chan doesn't just fall off a building. He feels the impact, in his bones, in his soul, in the eyes of the woman watching him from afar. Michelle Yeoh doesn't just kick through glass. She moves with purpose, with philosophy behind every strike. And even characters like Panther and Mei, who could have been reduced to stereotypes, are treated with enough nuance to leave lasting impressions. By the time the final act arrives, you realize you've not only followed an explosive story, you've followed a cast of living, breathing, unforgettable people. People who bleed, who doubt, who love, and who fight not just because the mission demands it, but because their convictions leave them no other choice. Police Story 3. Super Cop isn't just an action film. It's a character-driven epic disguised as a martial arts spectacle. And in every punch, every chase, every near-death moment, the real story is in the eyes of the people on screen. Their fears, their hopes, their desperate push for a world where the good guys still win, even when the odds say otherwise. The making of Police Story 3, Super Cop is the stuff of cinematic legend, not just because of what ended up on screen, but because of the astonishing, and at times absurd, journey that brought it to life. It wasn't simply a movie. It was a real-world daredevil mission, an act of devotion to physical cinema that few have ever attempted, and fewer still have survived unscathed. When Jackie Chan and Michelle Yeoh teamed up for this cross-border action epic, they weren't just playing super cops. They became them, leaping into danger with a reckless abandon that defied logic, gravity, and even their own safety. Production began with a massive shift in tone and scale. Jackie Chan had already stunned audiences with Police Story and its sequel, each escalating the action with increasingly jaw-dropping stunts. But for this third entry, he handed over the director's chair to Stanley Tong, a young and fearless filmmaker who matched Jackie's energy and vision step for step. This wasn't a traditional passing of the torch. It was more like lighting two torches and throwing them into a fuel tank. Tong brought a more international flair, pushing to shoot in multiple countries and incorporate the geopolitical tensions of the time, specifically between Hong Kong and mainland China. That move, bold as it was, created major production complications and a fresh wave of cinematic authenticity. Right from the start, the challenges were immense. Filming across borders meant dealing with entirely different film regulations, censorship boards, and technical logistics. Scenes shot in Guangzhou required careful negotiation with local authorities, and even basic things, like shooting in public, often needed military-level coordination. But Jackie Chan wasn't interested in CGI shortcuts or studio simulations. He wanted real streets, real helicopters, real explosions, and real sweat. And that meant a constant dance with danger. One of the most iconic sequences in Super Cop is the climactic chase involving a helicopter, a train, and a near-fatal leap. That wasn't done with stunt doubles or safety nets. Jackie Chan really hung from a flying helicopter as it soared over Kuala Lumpur's skyline. And when you see him crash onto a moving train in the film's finale, you're watching one of the most dangerous stunts he's ever done. No wires, no green screen, no faking. During one take, the chopper veered too low, and Jackie nearly lost his grip. He later admitted that he thought he was going to die mid-air. His body may have been trained to endure, but gravity was never one to play fair. And then there was Michelle Yeoh. This was her grand re-entry into film after a brief hiatus, and she was determined to make a statement. She wasn't content to simply be the co-lead. She wanted to match Jackie's legendary physicality, stunt for stunt. The production team was skeptical at first. Could anyone, not named Jackie Chan, perform such intense action without backup? Michelle quickly proved them wrong. In one of the most unforgettable stunts, she rides a motorcycle off a ramp and lands it on a moving train. The first attempt, she landed short. The bike slammed against the side, and she almost fell underneath the wheels. Rather than step back, she insisted on trying again. And on the second take, without fear, without hesitation, she nailed it. That single moment earned her international recognition and solidified her reputation as one of the toughest and most talented action stars in cinema history. But behind the curtain, this fearlessness came at a cost. Injuries were frequent, and medical attention was often delayed by the remote locations. Jackie suffered burns, twisted ankles, and shoulder injuries, all of which he shrugged off in typical Chan fashion. Michelle bruised ribs and tore ligaments, but insisted on continuing without delay. At one point, Stanley Tong himself was injured while demonstrating a stunt for the actors, a testament to how involved he was in every step of the production. The set of Super Cop wasn't just a movie set. It was a battlefield where everyone, cast and what makes Police Story 3, Super Cop more than just another explosive action spectacle is the sheer audacity of its craftsmanship. Beneath every hard-hitting punch, screeching car chase, or death-defying leap lies a careful blend of vision, innovation, and instinctual storytelling. This wasn't a film created in sterile sound stages or rendered in pixel-perfect CGI labs. This was action filmmaking forged in the fire of real-world danger, crafted by a crew that believed every shot should feel alive. From the sun-baked streets of Kuala Lumpur to the sweat-soaked prison cells of southern China, Super Cop wasn't just filmed. It was captured, like lightning in a bottle. One of the film's greatest production achievements was the seamless merging of Hong Kong and mainland Chinese filmmaking styles, a move that few films had successfully executed at the time. When director Stanley Tong came aboard, his mission wasn't just to make a bigger movie, it was to make a more global one. He wanted to combine the razor-sharp precision of Hong Kong stunt choreography with the sprawling geography and militaristic realism of mainland China's infrastructure. That meant convincing government agencies, local city officials, and security forces to allow access to real locations, vehicles, even personnel. So when you see Jackie Chan and Michelle Yeoh navigating tight city alleyways one moment and participating in a full-blown paramilitary raid the next, none of that was built on a soundstage. It was all real, all meticulously coordinated down to the minute, and often rehearsed only once before the cameras rolled. The production required one technical miracle after another just to stay afloat. Consider the iconic train finale. That wasn't a model or miniature train. It was a fully operational locomotive speeding through the countryside of Malaysia. Getting access to that train took months of negotiation, and once secured, there was only a tiny window of time to shoot the entire sequence. Each take was costly, complicated, and physically draining. Camera crews were placed on flatbeds, cranes were rigged onto moving platforms, and stunt coordinators were embedded in nearly every car of the train, constantly relaying safety updates through walkie-talkies while actors dangled inches from disaster. It was an orchestra of chaos, and somehow, Stanley Tong managed to conduct it with a sense of precision and madness that few filmmakers ever dare attempt. The helicopter sequences that became the film's hallmark were an even more nerve-wracking challenge. These scenes were shot without green screens, without digital augmentation, and without extensive rehearsals. Jackie Chan famously hung from the skids of a real helicopter as it lifted him hundreds of feet above city streets, with no safety harness visible to the camera. To get those shots, multiple helicopters were used, one for Chan, one for the camera crew, and one backup hovering in case of emergency. The aerial cinematography required a level of communication that bordered on telepathy. Pilots had to position their crafts within feet of each other mid-flight while maintaining the illusion of seamless narrative action. There were no second chances. One gust of wind, one missed cue, and things could have gone very, very wrong. And yet, the footage speaks for itself. Breathtaking, unfiltered, and absolutely real. Behind the lens, Stanley Tong embraced a handheld, on-the-ground aesthetic that would later become a defining trait of modern action filmmaking. Instead of static wide shots, he favored kinetic tracking shots, often placing the camera inside the chaos. In the prison riot sequence, for example, Tong had the cameraman wear protective gear and run with the actors through smoke, fire, and flailing fists. It created a visceral intimacy that made the audience feel like they were in the melee, not just watching from afar. This kind of camera work was incredibly risky, both for the operators and the cast, but it gave Supercop a gritty immediacy that helped it stand apart from the more sanitized action films coming out of Hollywood at the time. Then there's the fight choreography, which walked a tightrope between balletic rhythm and bone-crunching realism. The collaboration between Jackie Chan's stunt team and Michelle Yeoh's martial arts background resulted in scenes that felt uniquely organic. Take the hotel rooftop brawl, where Jackie uses everything from ladders to laundry poles as improvised weapons. Each fight was designed to flow like a conversation. Every move a reaction, every strike part of a narrative rhythm. The fights didn't just dazzle, they told stories. And they did so without wires, without stand-ins, and often with cameras rolling on real-time choreography performed at blistering speed. Even seasoned martial artists marveled at the timing and complexity required to pull off some of the exchanges. Michelle Yeoh brought her own layer of refinement to the action. Having trained in ballet and martial arts, she carried herself with a level of grace that elevated even the most brutal confrontations. But don't mistake grace for gentleness. Her stunts were every bit as dangerous as Jackie's. One particularly grueling sequence involved her leaping onto a moving van, then fighting her way across its roof while it careened down a dirt road. That shot required perfect timing, exact speed synchronization between camera cars and stunt vehicles, and absolute trust from everyone involved. One misstep, and she would have been flung into the roadside jungle. The result? A sequence that pulses with tension and elegance, a moment that feels simultaneously raw and choreographed. From a technical standpoint, Supercop also benefited from some subtle but innovative sound design choices. Rather than use stock punch sounds or generic explosion effects, the audio team custom-recorded dozens of impact sounds, wooden batons cracking against concrete, gunfire echoing through actual alleyways, the whir of helicopter blades captured from within the cockpit. These authentic audio textures gave every scene an added layer of depth, grounding the exaggerated action in a world that sounded real. When someone gets hit in Supercop, you feel it, not just because of the visuals, but because the sound is so tactile it practically bruises your ears. Lighting also played a key role in establishing the film's dual tone. In Hong Kong, the lighting is cooler, slicker, with neon and shadows painting a modern, slightly cynical city. But when the story shifts to mainland China, the lighting becomes warmer, flatter, more grounded, highlighting a contrast not just in geography, but in philosophy. This subtle shift was the result of careful location scouting and even more careful timing. Many outdoor sequences were timed to catch the golden hour, bathing the characters in a soft, heroic glow. The cinematographer, Artie Lam, knew that visual cues could quietly influence how the audience perceived each location, and used that knowledge to build emotional resonance across landscapes. Production hurdles weren't always about danger. Some were surprisingly mundane, yet equally disruptive. During the airport chase scene, the crew struggled to gain continuous access to the terminals due to flight schedules and tight security. They could only film in short bursts between active departures, forcing Tong to redesign the entire sequence so it could be broken into smaller parts. The final result? A fast-paced, fragmented chase that feels intentionally urgent, even though it was actually dictated by real-world limitations. That's the kind of creative problem-solving that defines Supercop, turning constraints into advantages, turning obstacles into momentum. And then there's the editing. Action films live and die in the editing room, and Supercop's post-production phase was a masterclass in rhythm and tension. Editor Peter Chung worked closely with Tong and Chan to preserve the continuity of action, even when sequences had to be shot over multiple days or in different locations. The fight scenes in particular had to maintain a consistent flow, even as they jumped between wide shots, inserts, and reaction close-ups. Chung's editing doesn't just keep the pace brisk. It emphasizes impact, clarity, and escalation. You never feel lost, even when the action becomes chaotic. And that clarity is what allows the film to hit harder, linger longer, and stay burned into memory. What's truly remarkable is that Supercop achieved all this without the safety net of modern technology. There were no previs animatics, no motion capture, no post-production stunt replacements. Everything had to be worked out in advance, often on location, and executed with a precision that bordered on madness. If a car needed to flip, they rigged it with explosives and flipped it. If a character needed to jump from a building, they jumped. The level of trust required between cast and crew was enormous. And yet, that trust was never misplaced. Everyone was there for the same reason, to make something unforgettable. And unforgettable it was. When the film debuted, audiences around the world reacted not with disbelief, but with awe. Critics and fans alike couldn't stop talking about the practical stunt work, the raw energy, the international flair. It felt like a movie that had crossed borders, not just geographically, but cinematically. It set a new bar for what action movies could be. And it did so not with flashy budgets or artificial polish, but with sweat, vision, and relentless ambition. The true magic of Police Story 3, Supercop, lies not in its stunts alone, but in how those stunts were conceived, executed, and integrated into a story that never forgets the human stakes. It's a film made by people who lived every frame, who risked bones and blood to bring something real to the screen. In doing so, they didn't just make an action film. They made history. And every time we watch, we're reminded of what movies can do when fear is left behind and the only limit is the sky. As Police Story 3, Supercop unfurls its explosive action across borders and ideologies. There's something deeper simmering beneath the adrenaline-soaked surface. An unspoken conversation about duty, identity, authority, and the cost of heroism. It's easy to be swept away by the high-octane spectacle of helicopters, hand-to-hand combat, and bullet-drenched raids. But for those who lean in closer, the film reveals itself as a surprisingly layered exploration of geopolitical tensions, personal allegiance, and moral gray zones in a rapidly changing world. The action is the lens, but the humanity, the cultural anxiety, and the symbolism are the light pouring through it. At its core, Supercop is a story about borders, not just geographical ones, but ideological, personal, and ethical. When Jackie Chan's Kakue is assigned to work undercover with the mainland Chinese police force, he's not just crossing a national line. He's stepping into a system with different laws, different authority structures, and a different rhythm of control. It's no coincidence that the movie opens in Hong Kong, a city known for its post-colonial complexity and hybrid identity, and then drags its protagonist into the heart of China, a place where obedience and duty carry a very different weight. Kakue's discomfort at being stripped of his badge, thrust into a secret mission, and forced to operate without the familiar rules of Hong Kong law enforcement mirrors the cultural friction between the two systems. Subtle but powerful. The film doesn't paint one side as superior or inferior. Instead, it places Kakue, and by extension the audience, in a position of contrast. In Hong Kong, he's used to chaos with freedom. In mainland China, he's introduced to order with rigidity. These differences are reflected in everything from the military-style uniforms to the hierarchical structure of the mainland police force. Even the training montages are revealing. While Hong Kong cops might rely on instinct and improvisation, their mainland counterparts drill in unison, moving as one. It's in this world that Kakue meets Inspector Jessica Yeoh, played by Michelle Yeoh, a character who embodies discipline, elegance, and quiet power. She's not just a partner. She's a counterbalance, a symbolic mirror to Kakue's chaotic good. Together, they don't just represent two law enforcement systems, they represent two ways of facing a broken world, through order or through empathy. But there's a deeper current running through the film's characterization: the cost of responsibility. From the very beginning, Kakue is a man caught between duty and personal sacrifice. He lies to his girlfriend May, jeopardizes his safety, and risks his entire career on a mission he barely understands, all in the name of justice. Yet, the film subtly questions whether justice is even attainable in such a murky context. The deeper Kakue goes into the undercover operation, the more he's forced to blur the line between cop and criminal. There's a potent scene early on where he has to help a known criminal escape from a labor camp to gain his trust. In doing so, Kakue commits a crime for the greater good. The camera lingers on his face, not triumphant, but conflicted. This is no longer a world of black and white morality. It's a storm of grays, and Kakue is caught in the middle. This moral ambiguity becomes a recurring theme throughout Supercop. As the mission deepens, Kakue finds himself embedded in a criminal world that operates on loyalty, hierarchy, and unspoken codes, not unlike the world he left behind in law enforcement. The parallelism is intentional. By showing how both systems require loyalty and sacrifice, the film suggests that the line between hero and villain is thinner than we think. It's not about who holds the gun. It's about why they're pulling the trigger. And sometimes, it's not even clear what the right reason is anymore. This theme of duality, of living two lives, following two codes, is visually reinforced throughout the film. Mirrors, reflections, and duplications appear frequently. Kakue is often seen in double shots, with glass or water subtly echoing his image. In one particularly symbolic moment, as he cleans blood from his face in a dim hotel bathroom, the mirror shows not a hero, but a man at war with himself. Even the film's two leads reflect each other. Kakue, the loose cannon cop who relies on intuition and chaos, and Yeoh, the stoic commander who prizes discipline and control. Together, they form a whole. But alone, they are incomplete. Two halves of a moral compass spinning in turbulent waters. Michelle Yeoh's character, Jessica Yeoh, adds another rich thematic layer to the film's fabric: gender roles within authority. While many action films of the era reduced female leads to damsels or love interests, Supercop grants Yeoh equal footing in every respect. She's not just Kakue's sidekick, she's his match, sometimes even his superior. Her presence in the film speaks volumes about gender representation in law enforcement, especially in a traditionally patriarchal structure. Her intelligence, grace, and ferocity challenge expectations, not just of Kakue, but of the audience. There's no sexual tension, no patronizing flirtation, just mutual respect and professional trust. In doing so, the film quietly but powerfully subverts the male-dominated norms of the genre. And then there's the symbolism of vehicles, constantly moving, always threatening to spin out of control. From motorcycles to helicopters to speeding trains, these machines are more than just set pieces. They're metaphors for the characters themselves. Unstoppable, dangerous, barreling toward uncertain destinations. The train, in particular, becomes a symbol of inevitability. It doesn't change direction. It doesn't pause for reflection. It simply charges forward, and those aboard must either adapt or be thrown off. It's no coincidence that the film's climax occurs on a moving train, forcing all the players, all the secrets, and all the consequences into a single, confined space. The symbolism is clear. When momentum takes over, the truth can't hide anymore. The helicopter, a constant threat and lifeline, is another potent metaphor. When Kakue clings to its skids, suspended between life and death, we see the ultimate visual of his internal struggle. He is literally hanging between worlds, between justice and lawlessness, between his real life and the false identity he's created, between survival and sacrifice. The choice to keep the camera rolling on the real stunt, capturing Jackie Chan's body swaying over the cityscape with no green screen, enhances the metaphor tenfold. This isn't just about physical risk. It's about emotional exposure. It's about how far a man can stretch before something breaks. But for all its personal symbolism, Supercop also makes subtle yet resonant commentary on broader societal themes. Released in 1992, the film arrived during a time of political uncertainty. Hong Kong was approaching its 1997 handover to China, and questions about sovereignty, identity, and trust loomed large. While the film never directly references politics, its narrative choices echo the anxieties of the time. The uneasy alliance between Hong Kong and mainland law enforcement wasn't just fiction. It was a metaphor for a real-world partnership fraught with mistrust and unfamiliarity. Watching Kakaway navigate a system he doesn't fully understand, struggling to maintain his values within a foreign framework, is a cinematic mirror of Hong Kong's own uncertainty. Will integration preserve identity, or will it erase it? Even the criminals, led by the suave but ruthless Chaibot, embody symbolic dimensions. They're not portrayed as caricatures. They're intelligent, organized, and motivated by power more than greed. Their global operations, hidden assets, and manipulation of both Chinese and Western systems highlight a theme of transnational corruption. They exist outside borders, untouched by jurisdiction. And that's the real danger, not just guns or drugs, but the erosion of national power in the face of globalized crime. The enemy is not just across the border. The enemy is everywhere. The film's treatment of technology also speaks to cultural transitions. Unlike earlier entries in the police story franchise, which focused on fists and firepower, Supercop introduces surveillance, military-grade equipment, and high-tech communication into the equation. It's not just brawn versus brawn anymore, it's information warfare. That shift represents a larger thematic evolution. In a modern world, the hero must outthink as much as outfight. But even as the tools change, the emotional toll remains. Surveillance can't heal bruises. Technology can't mend trust. And no amount of intel can fix a heart that's grown cold from lies and sacrifice. And sacrifice lies at the heart of the film's emotional undercurrent. Whether it's Kakaway choosing duty over love, Jessica Yeoh risking everything for a mission that may never reward her, or May enduring the pain of being sidelined by a man who's constantly chasing ghosts, it all comes down to what we're willing to give up for the sake of what we believe in. In many ways, Supercop is a quiet tragedy. The heroes win, but not without cost. They smile in the final frame, bruised and bandaged, but the weight in their eyes tells a different story. They've saved the day, but lost a part of themselves along the way. That emotional residue is what elevates Supercop from a great action film to a meaningful one. It doesn't preach. It doesn't wave banners or raise fists. Instead, it embeds its messages in the cracks between punches, the pauses between bullets, the looks between allies. It shows us a world on the brink of transformation, politically, personally, ideologically, and asks if anyone can cross those borders unchanged. And maybe that's the film's final, quiet theme, transformation. Because everyone in Supercop changes. Kakaway loses his innocence. Jessica finds unexpected trust. Even May, though often left behind, reveals surprising resilience. And through them, the film suggests that true heroism isn't about muscles or glory. It's about adaptability, compassion, the ability to stay human in a world that constantly asks you to harden. So yes, Supercop is a blistering, bullet-ridden, bone-breaking thrill ride. But it's also a cinematic meditation on identity, compromise, and conviction. It reminds us that the hardest battles aren't fought with fists or guns, but with the quiet choices we make when no one's watching. In the end, that's the power of the film's storytelling. Beneath every explosion lies a heartbeat, and in that heartbeat, a message. Even in chaos, there's meaning. Even in violence, there's humanity. In the electrifying world of Police Story 3, Supercop, chaos isn't just a theme. It's a carefully orchestrated visual symphony. And at the center of this breathtaking spectacle is Jackie Chan, not just as the charismatic lead, but as a driving creative force behind the film's bold, kinetic aesthetic. Alongside director Stanley Tong, Chan redefines what action cinema could be in the early 90s, not just through what the audience sees, but through how they feel it. Every frame, every sound cue, every edit pulses with an immediacy that places the viewer not in the audience, but in the action itself. The camera doesn't observe the chaos from a distance. It lunges into it, crashes through glass, dodges punches, swings on helicopters, and barrels down rooftops. Supercop doesn't just show the story. It physically hurls you into its beating heart. Right from the opening sequences, the film's visual language announces itself with unwavering confidence. The cinematography, supervised by Artie Lamb, adopts a gritty, handheld realism that contrasts sharply with the cleaner, more polished look of Western action films of the time. There's a visceral tension to the camera's movement. It's restless, unpredictable, almost as if it's another character in the scene. And that's exactly the point. Stanley Tong doesn't want passive spectators. He wants accomplices. When Kakue sneaks into the mainland prison camp, the camera isn't perched comfortably with an establishing shot. It trails behind him through shadows and fences, mimicking his nervous breath. The tight framing pulls us into the moment, creating a closeness that's almost claustrophobic. We don't watch him infiltrate, we infiltrate with him. As the narrative spirals into increasingly daring set pieces, the cinematography evolves to match the mounting stakes. During the legendary train and helicopter climax, the camera rigs become a marvel of ingenuity. Tong and Chan's team utilized cranes, dolly tracks, and even custom-built harnesses to capture shots that would have terrified most Hollywood directors of the era. And yet, they never let the technical complexity overshadow the raw emotion. When Kakue dangles from a helicopter flying over Kuala Lumpur's skyline, the shot isn't just impressive, it's terrifying. There's no CGI, no green screen, just Jackie Chan, his grip, and the camera refusing to look away. The natural lighting, the subtle wind distortion on the mic, the shaky handheld framing. It all creates a feeling of vertigo that can't be faked. That realism is further amplified by the film's legendary editing style. Unlike many American action films that slice up fight sequences into quick cuts to simulate intensity, Supercop revels in continuity. It embraces long takes, wide angles, and choreography that allows the audience to fully absorb the physicality of every movement. This is especially true during the extended fight scenes, where each blow, flip, or dive is captured in real time without cheating the frame. There's a deliberate rhythm to how these scenes are cut, quick enough to maintain urgency, but slow enough to let you feel the fight. You see Jackie leap, you see him land, and if he misses a beat, you see him crash. It's not about hiding imperfections. It's about turning them into storytelling beats. Take, for instance, the factory fight sequence, one of the most intense mid-film action scenes. The set is an industrial labyrinth of beams, chains, and rusted metal, visually echoing the inner workings of the criminal empire Kakue is trying to dismantle. Here, the camera weaves through the maze-like environment, mirroring Kakue's own disorientation. The choreography is meticulously paced, and Tong's editing ensures that the geography of the scene is always clear. There's no confusion about where each character is, because clarity is key to immersion. The film trusts its viewers to follow the action without disorientation. That trust becomes a contract. We pay attention, and in return, we get action that's honest, earned, and grounded in cinematic logic. Sound design is equally integral to the film's texture. Every punch, fall, or shattered window is meticulously engineered to heighten the sensory impact. But it's not just noise, it's storytelling. The heavy thud of a metal bar clashing with a bone isn't just about pain, it's about consequence. The soundscape shifts depending on the environment. In tight indoor scenes, sound bounces, ricochets, and builds pressure. In open spaces, like the explosive sequence on the train, sound becomes airy, distant, letting the scale of the moment breathe. When Kakue and Yeoh fight atop moving freight cars, the roar of wind and train wheels drowns out dialogue, forcing the actors to communicate through movement alone. That loss of verbal clarity isn't a mistake. It's a stylistic choice, letting action speak louder than words. Music, too, plays a strategic role in guiding tone. Composed by Chan Kwang-wing, the score is dynamic, but not intrusive. Unlike the overbearing soundtracks of many contemporaneous action films, Supercop uses music sparingly and strategically, often letting silence, ambient noise, or natural sound carry the tension. When the score does kick in, it's usually to underscore moments of high-stakes risk or emotional clarity. A subtle synth pad will swell beneath a quiet character moment, or a sharp percussion cue will underline a sudden betrayal. One of the film's most emotionally charged moments, when Kakawe's girlfriend May is kidnapped, features an almost imperceptible string section underneath the chaos. It's a minor key, slow, mournful, and it reminds the audience. Behind all this violence, someone is losing. Something they love. Perhaps the most iconic stylistic choice of all, though, is the decision to blend real stunts with wide, uninterrupted coverage. Jackie Chan famously refused stunt doubles in nearly all his scenes, and director Stanley Tong shared that commitment to authenticity. That shared vision gave rise to an unfiltered approach where danger itself became part of the storytelling. The audience isn't just witnessing peril. They're constantly aware that the actor is living it. There's no movie magic here. When Chan slides down a pole, it burns his hands. When he's thrown through glass, he's cut. This approach builds a unique emotional contract with the audience. One that says, this is real, and because it's real, you should care. Even the film's use of color subtly guides the viewer's perception. The visual palette is grounded, gritty urban hues, muted military greens, and the dull sheen of metal and concrete. But when explosions erupt or neon lights flicker through nighttime chases, the sudden bursts of color function like emotional flares, signaling spikes in adrenaline or narrative revelation. In one memorable moment, as Kakawe escapes a burning warehouse, the orange fire reflects off his sweat-drenched face in stark contrast to the cold blue shadows surrounding him. The visual metaphor is clear. Here's a man fueled by passion in a world increasingly devoid of warmth. Another powerful visual motif is height. Again and again, the characters are elevated on rooftops, cranes, helicopters, and most iconically, trains. These vertical spaces don't just provide thrilling set pieces. They reflect the stakes of the narrative. Every time Kakawe ascends, it's a metaphor for how high the pressure climbs. Each rooftop fight isn't just a battle for survival. It's a struggle against falling from grace, losing control, or being consumed by the very system he's trying to uphold. And because the camera follows him every step of the way, tracking, tilting, and craning in sync with his movements, we climb with him. We fall with him. And when he lands, battered but breathing, we share in the hard-earned relief. It's also worth noting how Tong occasionally interrupts the momentum of action with abrupt pauses. Small, quiet moments that let the narrative catch its breath. A subtle glance between Kakawe and Yeoh. A long shot of the cityscape before a chase begins. A slow pan across an empty corridor just before all hell breaks loose. These pauses are not filler. They are the inhale before the punch. The space where emotion lives. By deliberately pacing these moments, Tong ensures that the audience is emotionally present, not just visually overstimulated. And in the rare scenes of humor, like when Kakawe tries to balance his double life with May, or fumbles through his cover story with the criminals, the visual language softens. The camera loosens its grip. Lighting becomes more natural. Composition becomes more relaxed. These tonal shifts don't feel. When a film bursts with energy from its very first frame and never lets up until the final explosion, you can be sure there's more than just tight editing and stunt choreography fueling the engine. Police Story 3. Supercop runs on something far more electric. The chemistry of its cast. That spark, raw, palpable, and effortless, is what turns great action into unforgettable cinema. And no matter how high the stakes get or how wild the stunts become, the human element grounds it all. At the heart of that emotional core are Jackie Chan and Michelle Yeoh, two legends in their prime, who didn't just perform their roles. They met each other blow for blow with spirit, wit, and unshakable trust. Their on-screen dynamic is magnetic, but what makes it extraordinary is how naturally it flows from a shared philosophy of performance. Jackie, long known for blending charm and danger, found a rare equal in Michelle, who brought her own blend of elegance and lethal precision to the mix. From their very first scene together, there's an underlying current of mutual respect. Not just between their characters, but between the actors themselves. You can feel it in the way they move, never outshining each other, always pushing each other further. And behind the camera, that dynamic was just as powerful. Michelle wasn't brought in to be a sidekick or a romantic subplot. She was there to match Chan in action, agility, and presence. And she did brilliantly. Their chemistry isn't flashy or forced. It's rooted in rhythm, like a choreographed dance where both partners are completely in sync. Whether they're facing off with gangsters or leaping off rooftops, there's a silent language between them that speaks louder than any dialogue. Jackie's Kakaway is impulsive, quick-witted, always one step ahead of danger but two behind emotional clarity. Michelle's Yeoh is precise, composed, always scanning, always calculating. Together, they form a perfect narrative balance, yin and yang, chaos and order. And it's in the little moments, the stolen glances, the shared sighs, the quick smiles after surviving a brush with death, that their partnership truly shines. What makes this chemistry even more remarkable is how it was forged not in rehearsal rooms or team-building retreats, but in the fire of actual on-set danger. Jackie and Michelle didn't have stunt doubles. They didn't sit in trailers while others took their falls. They did the work. That mutual commitment to authenticity created a trust that bled into every scene. When Jackie hangs from a helicopter, it's Michelle down below in the train yard, coordinating their plan with perfect timing. When Michelle launches her motorcycle onto a moving train, one of the most jaw-dropping moments in Hong Kong cinema, Jackie is right there with her, fully aware that this wasn't a stunt anyone could take lightly. And the look of admiration on his face in that scene, that's not acting. That's awe. Behind the scenes, that camaraderie extended beyond just the leads. Director Stanley Tong, who also played a small role in the film, fostered a familial environment on set. But it wasn't just about warmth. It was about pushing each other to the brink of what was possible. The set of Super Cop was notoriously intense. Each stunt had to be meticulously planned, rehearsed, and executed with split-second timing. There was no margin for error. And yet, there was an unspoken understanding among the cast and crew. They weren't just making a movie. They were redefining what action cinema could look like. Tong himself famously performed many of the dangerous stunts first to prove they could be done safely. That leadership inspired everyone around him, especially Michelle, who said in interviews that Stanley's example made her feel empowered to take even greater risks. And while Michelle Yeoh had already proven herself as a capable action star in Hong Kong, Super Cop solidified her reputation internationally. Her performance wasn't just praised for physical prowess. It was celebrated for nuance, dignity, and strength. She wasn't playing a female version of a male archetype. She was carving her own. Her scenes with Maggie, who reprised her role as May, Kakaway's long-suffering girlfriend, added another layer of humanity to the story. Maggie brought vulnerability and humor to the film's emotional beats, especially during the chaotic mall sequence where May's jealousy turns into reluctant alliance. Their scenes were often improvised, grounded in the actors' off-screen rapport. Jackie, Michelle, and Maggie weren't just colleagues. They were collaborators, each helping the other elevate the material. Panther, the seemingly unremarkable middleman of the syndicate, gradually evolves into a central pillar of the narrative. Portrayed by Yeoh, Panther embodies a captivating blend of charm, menace, and unpredictable rage. He serves as both a threat and an opportunity, loyal to the cartel, particularly to Chaibot, yet not a mindless enforcer. A human dimension exists within him, a respect for camaraderie and an odd sense of honor. Kakaway and Yeoh manipulate this loyalty to infiltrate the organization, but they also risk empathizing with him. This is what makes Panther such an intriguing character. He's driven not by greed or ego, but by a profound sense of belonging and family within a ruthless hierarchy. When Kakaway helps him escape prison, Panther never forgets it. He later defends Kakaway and protects him in the face of doubt. This loyalty becomes a double-edged sword, transforming Panther into both a tool and a ticking time bomb ready to detonate if the truth ever comes to light. Supporting this dynamic trio of leads is the ever-beloved May, portrayed by Maggie. In many ways, May serves as the heart of the series, the grounding force that reminds us that Kakaway is more than just a super cop. He's a man, a boyfriend, and a person whose choices impact those he loves. While May doesn't possess the same level of agency as Yeoh in the field, her presence remains indispensable. Her accidental intrusion into the undercover mission is a masterstroke of tension and comedy, creating a volatile situation that could destroy everything. Chung delivers a nuanced performance, capturing May's warmth and fury. She's not merely comic relief. She's the emotional anchor. Her heartbreak, confusion, and eventual resolve infuse the film with moments of genuine poignancy, reminding Kakue and us of the personal toll behind every explosion. Chaibot, the villain in Super Cop, is a formidable figure who doesn't rely on screaming or snarling to instill fear. Portrayed with cool authority by Kenneth Sang, Chaibot is the puppet master who rarely gets his hands dirty, but whose presence looms over every scene. Unlike typical antagonists who revel in chaos, Chaibot is methodical, ruthless, and always 10 steps ahead. What makes him so effective is his unwavering belief in his own superiority. When he finally enters the narrative, he immediately tests Kakue not with violence but with subtle manipulation and cold observation. His measured dialogue, unnerving calm, and intelligence set him apart as a different breed of villain. One who believes in control and uses fear like a scalpel, not a hammer. Even the minor characters in Super Cop are meticulously crafted to leave a lasting impression. Chaibot's wife, initially portrayed as a background figure, is masterfully used in the final act to upend expectations. Her role becomes central in the climactic hostage exchange, and her desperation reveals a fleeting moment of vulnerability in Chaibot himself. The Syndicate soldiers, Yang's superiors, and even Kakue's handlers all serve as extensions of the film's overarching themes: trust versus betrayal, loyalty versus survival, and duty versus humanity. What makes Super Cop's characters so enduring is not just their well-written portrayal but also their evolution in response to the intense environment of the film. The pressure cooker atmosphere forces each character to react differently to the heat. Kakue fights harder and improvises more wildly, while Yang steadies herself and adapts with grace. Panther clings to loyalty until the walls crumble. May erupts with fury before transforming that rage into resilience, and Chaibot watches, calculates, and adjusts until the moment comes to strike. Then there's the fight choreography, a delicate balance between balletic rhythm and bone-crunching realism. Jackie Chan's stunt team and Michelle Yeoh's martial arts background collaborated seamlessly, resulting in scenes that felt uniquely organic. Take the hotel rooftop brawl, where Jackie employs improvised weapons like ladders and laundry poles. Each fight flows like a conversation, with every move a reaction and every strike part of a narrative rhythm. These fights don't just dazzle, they tell stories, and they do so without wires, stand-ins, or often with cameras rolling on real-time choreography performed at blistering speed. Even seasoned martial artists are astounded by the timing and complexity required to execute some of these exchanges. Michelle Yeoh adds her own layer of refinement to the action. Having trained in ballet and martial arts, she carries herself with a grace that elevates even the most brutal confrontations. But don't mistake grace for gentleness. Her stunts are every bit as dangerous as Jackie's. One particularly grueling sequence involves her leaping onto a moving van, fighting her way across its roof while it careens down a dirt road. This shot demands perfect timing, precise speed synchronization between camera cars and stunt vehicles, and absolute trust from everyone involved. A single misstep could have sent her plummeting into the roadside jungle. The result? A sequence that pulses with tension and elegance, a moment that feels simultaneously raw and choreographed. From a technical perspective, Super Cop also benefited from some subtle yet innovative sound design choices. Instead of relying on stock punch sounds or generic explosion effects, the audio team meticulously recorded dozens of authentic impact sounds. These included wooden batons cracking against concrete, gunfire echoing through real alleyways, and the whir of helicopter blades captured from within the cockpit. These immersive audio textures added depth to every scene, grounding the exaggerated action in a world that felt real. When someone gets hit in Super Cop, you feel it, not just because of the visuals, but because the sound is so tactile that it practically bruises your ears. Lighting also played a crucial role in establishing the film's dual tone. In Hong Kong, the lighting is cooler, slicker, with neon and shadows painting a modern, slightly cynical cityscape. However, when the story shifts to mainland China, the lighting transforms into warmer, flatter, and more grounded, highlighting a contrast not only in geography but also in philosophy. This subtle shift was achieved through meticulous location scouting and precise timing. Many outdoor sequences were carefully timed to capture the golden hour, bathing the characters in a soft, heroic glow. The cinematographer, Artie Lamb, understood that visual cues could subtly influence audience perception of each location and used this knowledge to build emotional resonance across diverse landscapes. Production challenges weren't always about danger. Some were surprisingly mundane yet equally disruptive. During the airport chase scene, the crew faced difficulties in maintaining continuous access to the terminals due to flight schedules and tight security. They could only film in short bursts between active departures, forcing Tong to redesign the entire sequence to break it into smaller parts. The result was a fast-paced, fragmented chase that synergy on set didn't go unnoticed when the film hit theaters. Audiences around the world didn't just react, they erupted. In Hong Kong, the film was an instant box office smash, hailed as a return to form for the Police Story franchise while boldly breaking new ground. Western audiences, many of whom were experiencing Jackie Chan and Michelle Yeoh for the first time, were stunned. Not just by the physicality, but by the personality that oozed from every sequence. The film wasn't just thrilling, it was fun, and audiences loved that they could laugh one moment, gasp the next, and cheer moments later, all without ever feeling manipulated. Critics were quick to acknowledge the film's unique alchemy. Reviewers praised the razor-sharp choreography, yes, but they also highlighted the natural charisma of the cast, particularly the interplay between Chan and Yeoh. Roger Ebert, for instance, noted the pure physical poetry of the film's action sequences, while emphasizing that the heart of the film wasn't just in its spectacle, but in its characters. And he was right. Viewers didn't walk away quoting one-liners. They walked away remembering the feeling of watching two performers risk everything. Not just for the shot, but for each other. That emotional investment translated into long-term fan engagement. Police Story 3. Supercop didn't fade into obscurity after its theatrical run. It became a cult favorite, a benchmark against which future action films would be measured. And as home video and DVD markets grew, the film found new life with audiences around the world, especially in the United States, where Jackie Chan's popularity exploded in the mid-90s. When Supercop was re-released for American audiences under the Dimension Films label, it came with a new English dub and soundtrack, but the essence remained intact. And even with the changes, what shone through was the irreplaceable chemistry of its leads and the authenticity of their performances. The set itself became part of the legend. Stories of broken bones, bruised egos, and near-death experiences circulated among fans like myths. One infamous moment occurred when Jackie Chan mistimed a jump and crashed through a moving train carriage, narrowly avoiding a catastrophic injury. That footage was kept in the final cut, and the outtakes rolled during the credits. A signature Jackie Chan move that reminded audiences of just how much real pain went into creating the illusion of invincibility. Fans didn't just appreciate these moments, they revered them. They saw them as proof that what they were watching wasn't fabricated action. It was a love letter to the craft. And while Jackie had always been known for his blooper reels, Supercop's end credits struck a different chord. Seeing Michelle Yeoh bruised, wincing, limping, yet smiling, offered a rare glimpse into her resilience. She wasn't invincible. She was determined. That vulnerability made her even more iconic. Fans rallied around her not just as a performer, but as a pioneer, someone who proved that women could lead action films without compromise, without apology. And her influence would ripple through the decades, inspiring future stars from Charlize Theron to Gal Gadot. The lasting power of Supercop wasn't just in its action sequences. It was in the way it made audiences feel seen. It showed that the bonds between characters, built on trust, challenge, and quiet loyalty, mattered just as much as the bullets and explosions. And that authenticity extended beyond the film. At press junkets and interviews, Jackie and Michelle didn't speak like actors promoting a blockbuster. They spoke like comrades recounting battle stories. They praised each other openly, teased each other affectionately, and always pointed back to the team that made it possible. That team spirit is part of what has kept the police story legacy alive for over 3 decades. Fans don't just revisit Super Cop for nostalgia. They come back because the film still feels alive. It hasn't aged into a relic. It's grown into a testament. A testament to what can happen when egos are checked at the door and talent is allowed to collide, unfiltered, unrestrained, and uncensored. And perhaps that's the greatest legacy of Police Story 3, Super Cop. Not just that it raised the bar for action cinema, but that it reminded the world what real cinematic chemistry looks like. It isn't conjured in a writer's room or stitched together in post. It happens on the set, in the bruises, in the breathless laughter between takes, in the knowing looks after a perfect shot. It's in the sweat, the grit, the shared glances of 2 people hanging from the edge of a helicopter and trusting that the other won't let go. That's the heartbeat of Super Cop, and it's what makes it unforgettable. Jarring, they feel human, because even in the middle of a geopolitical thriller, life is messy, funny, and unpredictable. The ability to pivot between tones without breaking visual consistency is a hallmark of Super Cop's direction. In the end, Police Story 3, Super Cop isn't just a story told through performance. It's a story etched into every lens flare, sound cue, stunt rig, and splice of film. It's cinema at its most physical, most intimate, and most alive. Stanley Tong and Jackie Chan didn't just make an action movie. They crafted a visceral experience where the visuals speak. They speak of desperation, of courage, of limits tested and hearts pushed to the edge. They remind us that storytelling isn't just about plot. It's about sensation, about feeling the sweat, the wind, the risk in your bones. And perhaps that's the greatest triumph of Super Cop's cinematic language. It makes you feel every second of its journey. It doesn't ask for your attention. It demands it, not through flashy effects or empty spectacle, but through authenticity, artistry, and an unrelenting commitment to telling the truth of the moment, no matter how bruised, breathless, or broken it may be. That's the legacy of its visual storytelling, and that's what makes it unforgettable. Some films roar onto the screen with such intensity, such unfiltered energy, that they leave a trail of influence long after the final credits roll. Police Story 3, Super Cop isn't just a sequel. It's not just an action film. It's a cultural eruption, a thunderous display of what happens when raw physicality, razor-sharp direction, and fearless performances collide. Decades after its release on July 4, 1992, it still hits like a wrecking ball. Not just for what it achieved in its time, but for how it reshaped the action genre across continents, across languages, across cinematic traditions. In its wake, Super Cop didn't just inspire, it redefined. To understand Super Cop's legacy, you first have to recognize the landscape it exploded into. By the early 90s, Hong Kong action cinema was already in a class of its own, relentless, visceral, dripping with innovation. Jackie Chan had carved a niche far removed from the Hollywood action stars of the West. Where American action heroes walked through bullets with indifference, Chan bled. He struggled. He improvised. He flailed his way out of danger in ways that felt more real and more thrilling than anything audiences had seen. But Police Story 3 was something else entirely. It wasn't just a Hong Kong film. It was a Hong Kong film thinking globally. The ambition was bigger, the scale more daring, the stakes, both narrative and physical, impossibly high. What makes Super Cop resonate decades later is that it didn't rely on CGI spectacle or inflated budgets. It relied on conviction. Every fight, every chase, every heart-pounding stunt was grounded in a belief that the audience could feel the difference, that they'd recognize authenticity when they saw it. And they did. Jackie Chan hanging from a helicopter, Michelle Yeoh landing a motorcycle onto a speeding train. These weren't just cool stunts. They were cinematic declarations. They told viewers, this is what action can be when there's nothing between you and the danger but a camera lens. And that lens, directed with unflinching precision by Stanley Tong, who orchestrated the chaos with the elegance of a conductor leading a symphony of violence and velocity. Tong wasn't merely a director. He was a visionary who understood that the visual language of action had to evolve. And evolve it did. Super Cop brought an operatic grandeur to grounded action. It proved that fight scenes could have rhythm, that explosions could have structure, that momentum itself could be a narrative force. It didn't just influence directors, it re-educated them. The ripple effect was immediate and enduring. In Hollywood, where action had grown bloated with steroidal machismo and machine gun monotony, Super Cop arrived like a lightning bolt. Suddenly, filmmakers were scrambling to match the kinetic clarity of Hong Kong cinema. The Bourne franchise, the Rush Hour trilogy, the Mission Impossible series, all of them owe a debt to Super Cop. Not just in choreography, but in tone. The fusion of humor, danger, and acrobatics wasn't just novel. It became a blueprint. A generation of stunt coordinators and second-unit directors began, studying Jackie's timing, Michelle's grace, Stanley's pacing. Western cinema had long worshipped firepower. Super Cop reminded everyone of the poetry in fists and feet. And then there's the matter of gender. Michelle Yeoh's performance wasn't just groundbreaking. It was tectonic. She wasn't playing against Jackie Chan. She was rising with him. In an era where women in action films were often relegated to support roles or romantic subplots, Yeoh's Inspector Yang stood shoulder to shoulder with Kakue. She commanded her own narrative space. She made danger look regal. Her poise, discipline, and bone-rattling stunt work shattered every rulebook. She didn't break barriers. She obliterated them, and her influence radiated across decades. Without Yeoh, there's no Trinity in The Matrix, no Furiosa in Mad Max, Fury Road, no Evelyn Wong in Everything Everywhere All at Once. Her work in Super Cop didn't just show what was possible. It made the impossible expected. The film's international release, years after its Hong Kong debut, only deepened its legacy. When Dimension Films picked it up in 1996, rebranding it as simply Super Cop for American audiences, the impact was seismic. The dubbing may have softened the edges for Western ears, but nothing could dull the film's visceral punch. Suddenly, Jackie Chan wasn't a cult hero, he was a global superstar. He began appearing on American talk shows, performing stunts live, explaining how many bones he'd broken in the name of cinematic purity. Super Cop was the gateway drug. It didn't just open doors, it bulldozed them. Critically, the film earned what most action films rarely do: respect. Reviewers didn't merely call it entertaining, they called it revolutionary. They marveled at the intricacy of its set pieces, the charm of its leads, the elegance of its physical storytelling. Over time, the film earned a near-mythical status among action purists. It became shorthand for everything the genre could aspire to be. When Quentin Tarantino gushed about Hong Kong cinema, it was films like Super Cop he was referencing, works that pulsed with life, crafted with sweat instead of spectacle. Awards in Hong Kong further cemented the film's cultural footprint. While action films are often ignored during award season, Super Cop earned recognition for its direction, its choreography, and especially for Michelle Yeoh's contribution. The stunts weren't just technical marvels, they were performances, and they were treated with the reverence they deserved. But awards are fleeting. Legacy is enduring. And the true test of a film's impact isn't measured in trophies. It's measured in echoes. And Super Cop's echoes are everywhere. They're in the fight choreography of modern blockbusters that mimic its rhythm without ever quite replicating its soul. They're in the conversations among filmmakers who cite it as the reason they picked up a camera. They're in the documentaries and retrospectives that analyze its set pieces frame by frame, marveling at how each sequence was conceived, rehearsed, executed, and miraculously survived. And they're in the fans, those who still gather for midnight screenings, still post gifs of the train-top fights, still cheer every time Michelle Yeoh lands that impossible bike jump with godlike precision. The film also left a mark on the industry behind the scenes. Super Cop sparked global interest in Hong Kong stunt teams, leading to cross-cultural collaborations that would reshape action for years to come. Western studios began hiring Hong Kong fight choreographers. They stopped sneering at practical effects and started studying them. Suddenly, authenticity was marketable again. Suddenly, actors were being asked to do their own stunts, not for insurance reasons, but because audiences had seen Super Cop and they could tell the difference. And that's perhaps the film's greatest cultural impact. It reconnected action cinema to truth. In an age of green screens and overproduced digital mayhem, Supercop remains a visceral reminder of what real stakes feel like. It's the sweat on Jackie's forehead as he dangles from a helicopter. It's the dirt on Michelle's palms after she skids across gravel. It's the ragged breath, the flinch, the spontaneous laugh of relief when they survive the impossible. These moments, raw, imperfect, human, are what make Supercop timeless. Even as Jackie Chan's career reached global heights, with Hollywood hits like Rush Hour, Shanghai Noon, and The Tuxedo, he repeatedly pointed back to Supercop as one of the proudest achievements of his filmography. And Michelle Yeoh, who would go on to rule both martial arts epics and indie dramas, never let the world forget where her action legacy was carved. When she won the Oscar for Everything Everywhere All at Once in 2023, cinephiles around the globe pointed to Supercop as the beginning of that journey. A moment when a Malaysian actress stood toe-to-toe with Jackie Chan and declared, "Without a word, I belong here." And how fitting that even now, decades later, the film continues to inspire. New generations discover it on streaming platforms, marveling at a kind of action they've never seen before. For them, Supercop isn't nostalgia. It's a revelation. A jolt of adrenaline from an era when actors bled for their art and directors risked their lives for the perfect shot. They watch, wide-eyed, as stunts unfold with no cuts, no digital scaffolding, just bodies, gravity, and nerve. And they ask, why don't movies feel like this anymore? The answer, of course, is that few ever did. Supercop is that rare intersection of talent, timing, and tenacity. A perfect storm of performance and passion. It didn't just survive the test of time, push time forward. It widened the lens through which action cinema would be viewed. It gave permission to blend humor and danger, grace and grit. It invited the world to see martial art as cinematic poetry. Its final legacy may not lie in a single scene or a single stunt, but in the ethos it created, that action should be felt, not just seen. That characters should leap not just through windows, but off the page. That risk, when taken with honor, creates resonance. And that two performers, suspended between helicopters and trains, between chaos and choreography, can do more than entertain. They can transcend. So Police Story 3, Supercop endures not just as a film but as a movement. A movement toward authenticity, toward balance, toward excellence. Its explosions may have faded from the skyline, but its heartbeat still echoes. In every rooftop sprint, in every behind-the-scenes stunt rehearsal, in every young filmmaker who dreams of capturing lightning in a lens. And in that sense, Supercop didn't just leave a legacy.